Hello everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. My name is Angela Andrew and today we're going to be talking about the info panel, which might not seem like quite a big deal, especially if you've been using Mylio Photos for a while, but there are a lot of things there. You've probably used some of them. You might not know about some of the others, and there might be a few little things that you didn't know you could do. So what we're going to do today is go through everything in the info panel, and I'll get you acquainted with all of the metadata keeping and storytelling options that are available there to help you preserve those memories. Before we jump into today's topic, I do want to let you know that we have our live Q&A events typically every Tuesday and Thursday. Now, next Thursday is a federal holiday here in the US, so we will not be having Q&A on Thursday next week. We will be here on Tuesday, and we'll be back again on Friday. Next Friday's topic will be about quick filters. So if you've been wondering how to filter your library to narrow down and find specific categories of information and media, that's going to be a great topic. We'll go in depth in all of those different options you have in the quick filters panel so you can make the most of it. That will be next Friday. So I hope you can join me on Tuesday for Q&A and Friday for coffee break. With that, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic, which is the info panel. We're going to go through all of the things that you need to know to get the most out of this. I'll show you how to customize the info panel, what photo details you can view and edit there, get to know the standard and family history of use. If you didn't know, there's two different ways that you can view the information in the info panel, and a few smart tips to help you organize and preserve your memories. So let's go ahead and jump in here. So the reason we have an info panel is because there's more to your pictures than just the pixels. They are your memories, and there's certain details about those images that you're going to want to view and want to protect. And the info panel helps you add context, such as who, what, where, and when something happened in that photo. You can correct incorrect data or add missing data. It helps make photos searchable, so all of the information you're adding there in the info panel helps make things easier to find. And it helps you tell the story and preserve the legacy of what's in that photograph, especially when you're working with historical pictures or pictures that will one day become part of your family's history. Preserving those details is super important. So how to open the info panel? It's pretty simple. You guys have probably mostly figured this out. Over here on the right, you've got a little info icon. On desktop and on tablets, you click that. If you are on a phone, it's a little bit harder to find. You might not have located it. What you're going to do is click that little More menu in the upper right, that little three dots, and you'll find in the More menu the info panel. And that will go ahead and pop up the info panel as an overlay over whatever it is you're looking at. If you want to, from the single photo view, if you're looking at a single image, you can also swipe up from the bottom of the screen, and that will pull up info on that particular image. So that's a little shortcut that you might not have known about, and it's just a great way to kind of get an overview of what's going on in your image. So click that eye icon. Let me just jump over here to the app real quick and show you in the live application. I have it open. Again, you can just open and close the info panel with that icon. The other thing you want to know is the info panel will display different information depending on what you have selected. If you're looking at a single photograph or you're looking at the grid with one photo that is selected, that's what's going to show the information there in that sidebar. It's going to be about whatever you have selected. If you have a group of images selected, it's going to show whatever information overlaps between all of those images. And if you have a folder selected, it's going to show information about that folder or album or person. So what you see in that panel can change depending on what you have selected. Now, there's a couple of things that you might want to customize here. You can resize this panel to fit your screen a little bit better. So if you go here and you just move your mouse between the grid and that panel, or a single image and that panel, you can make this bigger or smaller. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize you can do. And that makes it a lot easier to work with, especially when you're working with, say, a longer caption, you're wanting to tell a little bit more of a story here. Making this panel bigger allows you to see more of what you're entering at once. Same with your title, or if you're looking at a really long file name, being able to see more there is helpful. I usually keep it at its smallest, which is right about here. I think that's as small as that can go. But you can move it out, and I do that when certain circumstances necessitate it. As you're browsing through this section, you'll also notice that there are disclosure arrows. So if you're not seeing the information you expect to see in a specific section, make sure you open up some of these arrows. That's going to give you more information about some of these broader categories. That's just a great way to navigate. And also, by keeping them closed, makes it a little bit more compact and, again, a bit easier, especially if you're working on a smaller screen. The cool thing about this is however you leave it, and if you leave the program and you come back to it, it will go back to the way you had it. So if I have this wider and I like to work with it wider, next time I open Mylio, it will be wider. Same goes with whatever sections I have collapsed and which ones I have open. If that's how I leave it, that's how it'll be when I come back to it. So that's a nice little helpful bit. The other thing is that we have two separate views of the info panel. By default, the family history view is on by default. And we did that because there's a lot of people who use Mylio who use it specifically for managing their family collections. And the family history view puts a lot of those tools and fields front and center. My personal preference is actually to use the standard view, which is the old view, and you can switch between them at any time. And I've got a comparison chart here in just a second that'll show you exactly what's included in both. But for the most part, it's the exact same information that is presented in two separate ways. You can see here on the left, you've got sections here for your keywords, smart tags, and then so forth. Your title and caption, they're not up here in a collapsible section. They are just there at the top. And here in family history, it's a little bit more compact. Most of the information you're going to be working with is under the family history section, and you can see the other sections also overlap. So it's just a matter of what you're working on, what you're trying to accomplish, and a personal preference. So to switch back and forth, what you can do is go up here to the More menu, that three dots in the upper right, and toggle family history on. You can see it switches to the family history view. And if I want to turn that off, I can go ahead and toggle that off. And it doesn't change any of your metadata. Everything is still preserved. It's just two different ways of looking at it. You might also notice that something like caption is called description in the family history view. That's because that's what most of those programs, when they read the XMP metadata, so if you're going through like Ancestry or Family Search or something like that, they expect a description field. And it's actually two different fields in your XMP. If you put something in the caption, Mylio is going to add that to the description. If you put something in description, Mylio is going to add that to the caption. So either way, those fields are getting filled by Mylio. And so you don't have to worry about doing it in both places. It's just a different way of looking at it. And whichever one works best for you is the one that you should work in. If you're wanting to send things to Family Search, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the differences here, because that's where you might be interested in switching over to that family history view. So the core fields are all the same. The people view has a separate section in the standard view, whereas it's located inside of the family history section. And same with places. Places has its own separate section in the standard view, whereas those same fields are located inside the family history section. Let me just show you that really quick, because I've had people wonder where these things went because they had that family history section collapsed, think they didn't want to add any family history information. And they're like, where are my places? Where are my people? It's because they're here underneath family history, and you can go ahead and scroll down. There's people and there's places right there. It's just collapsed under that larger section, but it is the exact same fields. So you don't have to worry about losing any other functionality. The other thing that you're going to notice here is up the top, you've got this Post to Family Search button. If you select a picture and you want to post it to Family Search, you can do that here from the Family History view. You cannot do that from the Standard tab. So if you want to do that, switch over to the Family History tab and you will be able to accomplish that. The other thing is down here under Places, this has this historic location shown. This is kind of a cool thing. It uses lookup information from Family Search to take a GPS location that's a modern location and does a historical lookup of what has been there in the past. It doesn't necessarily change anything about what your metadata says, but it's a really cool reference tool that if you're working with historical photos, that is also here and not present in that standard view. Otherwise, they are all exactly the same. So you have your historical location, your Post to Family Search. Oh, and one other field here called event name. And if you are, again, big into family history, you have event names. This is separate from events on the calendar in Mylio. So this, again, only shows up in this family history view. It's just another place for you to put, you know, grandma's birthday or mom and dad's anniversary. You can put that event name there. It doesn't do anything else in Mylio other than give you a place to put that event name. It saves it to the metadata. And again, works with platforms like Family Search, like Ancestry, anybody who follows those family history metadata working group standards, that is what that's for. So personally, I don't use that very often, but if you need it, it is there. And again, only possible in that family history view. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these other things that you have available in the info panel. I like to break it up into two sections here. There are fields that you have control of, editable fields that you can change and modify, and then other fields that are view only and just for context. The ones that you cannot change are going to be the things about your camera and the file type. So if Mylio is not going to be able to alter whether this is a 4,000 by 4,000 pixel image. It's just going to tell you that's how big it is. It's going to tell you how much space it's taking up, things like that. It's going to tell you what camera it was captured with and the shutter speed and so forth. That cannot be changed in Mylio. There are other tools out there that will let you modify these things, but in Mylio, we didn't feel that was terribly important for those kind of facts to be able to be changed. Now there are editable fields, and that's where you can do things like add a title, caption, change the dates, or use those fuzzy dates, those non-specific dates in Mylio that let you give a broader range rather than a specific timestamp. Add your location information, keywords, tag faces, see what albums and categories things are in, use those smart tags, add your copyright information, and change the file name if you want. One thing to note about working with file names is that does rename the actual file in your file system. So let me just point that out really quick. Here in Mylio, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll back up, and I'm right now in the family history view. If I was in the standard view, it would be just above that first section. But you'll see I have the file name here. It's just IMG 5871. If you decide you want that to be something more descriptive, you can change that, but just know when you change that, it is changing it in the file system on your devices, in your folder structure, not just in Mylio. So do that, I would say, with some level of caution. No, it's not something that you can just do a Command or Control Z to undo, but you can change it again. So it would be a manual change to go ahead and bring that back if you changed it to something unintentionally. All right. So batch editing. When you go through and you use things in the info panel, it's a great way to see things about single images, but you can also view and edit things for multiple groups of images. So for example, if you go and you take pictures, let me just make an example here. I'm going to go back over here to Mylio. I went to a concert last weekend. I can grab all of these pictures from the concert and I can type in a description that fits everything, and then that description gets posted and applied to each one of those images. Additionally, I could go in here and change the date. So if I scanned a bunch of images and that entire group of images was from a certain time frame or a certain date, I could change that for everything. So you can do different changes to a group of images. You don't have to just do them one at a time, which I find to be very, very helpful. Additionally, if you do something accidentally, for most of the things in the info panel, there is an undo. And this goes for a lot of things that you can do in Mylio Photos. You can do a Command or Control Z, so the typical, kind of system-wide shortcut for undo. You can undo many of those steps. Now, there's certain things that you can't undo, like those renaming of files. That would have to be another manual correction. But if you, let's say, take a smart tag, you decide that a smart tag does not apply, you don't want that particular picture to come up with that smart tag. So let's go ahead and pick an image here. I'm just going to grab this one. Let's go down here to smart tags. And I really don't think that I want visual properties to be listed and exposure. Those don't really help me. Bokeh, I like that one. Maybe I want to even up level that one into an actual keyword. So by clicking the check mark, that makes it into an actual keyword. And keywords are saved to your XMP metadata. Smart tags are Mylio only. So it gives you a suggestion, and then you can go ahead and say, yes, I want that to be a keyword, or no, I don't. So from there, if I were to decide, you know what, maybe I don't like that change that I just made, you can do an undo. So Command or Control Z on your keyboard, and that will undo it. The other thing you can do with smart tags and also with faces is you can right click on an image and say rescan smart tags. That'll tell Mylio to rescan this image and look for other things in the AI object recognition. And same goes for faces. If you have a picture of people and you hit ignore, you can rescan faces. You'll see that it just popped up again there with those same smart tags, even the ones that I removed. because I rescanned it. So there's a lot of different ways that if you have an oops moment, you can undo. So remember that Command or Control Z. It's Command Z if you're on a Mac, Control Z if you are on Windows. So a lot of those things, if you type something in, you don't like that change, you can undo. For some things, it would be a manual change. So just pay attention to when you get a dialog that pops up onto the screen and says, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Typically, that's because it's something that isn't easily undone. So I think that's all for batch edits. And then just a few tips for metadata. When you're going through and you're adding and changing things in the info panel, Mylio does not alter your original image. All of these changes are saved to your XMP sidecar files, so they're little tiny text files that take up very little space, and they sit in your file system next to your pictures. When you're going through, if you happen to be browsing through the file system, don't mess with those files. If you delete them and perhaps that metadata hasn't synced to your other devices, that information could be lost. So any of that context and story that you've added, those XMP files are really important to help hold that information. The other really big benefit of XMPs is that they are an industry standard format. They're not Mylio specific. So if you took your picture plus that XMP to just about any other major asset manager out there, that's going to be able to translate and they're going to be able to read that information. So the work that you're doing in Mylio typically will be cross-platform, cross-application, and works in a variety of places. So make sure you take care of those XMP files. You don't typically need to do anything with them, but just know that they are there and that they are important. Mylio will make sure they're synced across all your devices so you can view and edit that metadata no matter whether you're on your phone, your computer, your tablet, and wherever you are. When it comes to adding and changing dates, we've done entire sessions on this, but if you don't know the exact date or time for something, feel free to use those fuzzy dates. That's where you can add a non-specific date to something. So if this was a scanned photo and maybe this is the date that I scanned it, you can actually change this, click on the ellipsis and choose a different format. So you could say I want to make this a decade and maybe this was taken in the 60s, click save, and that's going to go ahead and change the date on that image. And again, it changes it in that metadata as well. Use the info panel as an opportunity to tell stories and get that context and information from that moment that you were there. Just because you remember what was happening at that moment does not mean the next person looking at this picture is going to remember. So if it's important, if it tells a story that you want the next generation to know about, make sure you're adding that context. The best places to do that are going to be here in the title and description, and then also down here in keywords, because keywords are going to be those words that you know to search for this by. The AI is going to pick up some of those things, but object recognition is not the same as our own personal recall and our own associations. The way that we think of things and what we associate something with may have nothing to do with the way AI sees it. So if there's a specific event, broad location, broad description that you want to enter here into keywords, that just makes it more searchable for the future. So add those details because it's going to preserve those memories and those stories. And then finally with albums, you can see in the info panel which albums pictures have been added to. And this is a great way to, again, group those pictures together, tell certain stories, and just keep things organized in whatever way makes the most sense for you. So with that, just a quick little recap. We covered opening and customizing the info panel, the difference between the edit and reference only fields, the standard and family history view, and a little bit about metadata. What I would like to challenge you with today is to pick 3 of your photos, add a title, tag a person, and write a short caption or description. If you do this, and if you were to even make this something that you regularly do, maybe on the weekends, you go in and pick 3 pictures and you add this little bit of information, you are making your library that much more searchable, that much more useful, and making it so those stories do not get forgotten. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor for questions, and we can go ahead and jump into that. I don't see any hands up, but if you have questions, just go ahead and you can use the raise hand icon there at the bottom of the screen, or you can simply type your question into the chat or say, I have a question, and we will get into those. I don't see anything in the chat yet. All right. Edward, you've got a question.
Yes. I've got several photos that they didn't pick up the faces on the people. How do I force tag those individuals?
Yeah, so if you have a picture that has faces here. So let me go ahead and grab this one of me and my husband at the concert. Let's say it picked up the faces for me and him, but maybe I wanted to pick up a few more here in the background. What you can do is right click on that and choose rescan faces, and that will pick up any other recognizable faces. Now, for some reason, it might not always pick up all the faces. It could be because the face is blurry, because somebody's face is partially turned, things like that. In that instance, that's where you can add the manual tag. So let's say I know this person here with the cowboy hat and I want to tag this person. I can tap and hold. It brings up a little square, and then I can type in who that is and tag that person. Or maybe I know the person who was taking this picture. They're not in the picture, but they were there with me, and I want to associate this picture with them. I can go over here to the people section, which is going to be up here. And under other people, I can click that plus and type in their name. So that way I can remember who was there and who took the picture, and maybe even want to add that in the description, but I can have that show up in their collection as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, what else have you guys got for me today? And it doesn't have to be on today's topic. Any questions you have about Mylio, it's open season. All right. And also just to let you know that Lori did post a different poll up on the screen. So if you haven't yet, take a moment to answer that. That just lets us know if this session was helpful, what you guys would like to learn more about, and gives you an opportunity to give feedback to the team. So we really appreciate each and every one of you who takes the time to do that. And I want to give a special shout out to Lori for being here, helping out, posting some helpful links in the chat. She's added a lot of really good context there. So make sure you take a look at those as well. And if there's no other questions, I guess we can wrap up a little bit early. Last chance. All right. Well, then just a quick reminder, next week we will have Q&A on Tuesday, but not on Thursday. Thursday's a federal holiday, so we will be taking that day off, but we will be back on Friday. Next week's coffee break, we will be talking about quick filters. So that's going to give you, I think, a good overview on how to take a large amount of information and whittle it down to something very specific, and all the little different tools and nuances that you'll need to know to make the most of quick filters. So I hope you'll be able to join me for that. And I think that's it for today. I want to wish you guys a wonderful weekend. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.